When a property goes to auction, there can sometimes be multiple prices associated with that property. So let's go through them. Before any auctioneer lists a property, one of the first things they'll do is they'll establish a valuation range. Now, this can sometimes be done in-house, or it can be done by third-party independent valuations. But yeah, basically the idea is that you figure out what's the low end of the range, what's the high end, and then what's in the middle. And this is a good basis for the auction to proceed. One of the things that scares sellers about auctions is that the final price achieved at auction will be less than they're actually willing to accept. So to prevent this, we use a reserve price, and we'll call that R. So where do we set R? Well, if we set it too high, we've got an increased chance of a failed auction, that the final price doesn't achieve that. If we set it too low, then there's a chance that the seller walks away with something that they weren't happy with. For argument's sake, let's say at the low end, there's a 90% chance of a successful auction, and at the high end, there's a 10% chance of a successful auction. So we want to be somewhere here. And let's say the seller picks this as their reserve. Now, the reserve is only known to the seller and to the auctioneer. It's not made public. So what price do we advertise to the public? This is called the guide price. And where do we set the guide price? Well, it's very tempting for many auction houses to set a very low guide price in order to tease people, in order to get people excited. Many auction houses do this and have done this. The problem with this is that by advertising the property too low, you invite people that were never really willing to pay the reserve. You often end up annoying people because they feel like they've been misled. To avoid this, industry standards have developed over time. So for example, in the UK, the standard is that the guide ought to be within 10% of the reserve. So let's use that. Let's say this is our guide. This is the price that's advertised to the public, and it's within 10% of the reserve. So let's say the auction begins. First bid comes in at the guide price, and then the next bid comes in, and then the next one, and then the next. At this point, it's clear to everyone that the reserve hasn't been met, because on most platforms it will tell you that. And the reason for that is to let these bidders know that the seller is under no obligation to sell at any of these prices. A deal may be made after the auction, but it's totally up to the seller. He's not obligated. So the bidding continues. And then all of a sudden, the reserve has been met. So this will be known to all of the bidders. And the reason auction houses tend to tell the bidders that the reserve has been met is because bidding generally accelerates once bidders know this. And the reason for this is now every bidder knows that if they're the highest bidder, the property will be sold to them. So it's their last chance to achieve it, basically. So let's say the bidding continues and accelerates and excitement builds, and then the auction comes to a close. This guy has got the highest bid. So his bid, his final bid, is what we would either call sale price, and just standard real estate jargon, or more auction specific, we can see it called the hammer price, as in when the hammer comes down, that's the final price. So we've got the sale price, so the hammer price here. And we've got a successful auction on our hands. As long as the valuation was done accurately, the reserve was set properly, and the guide was set realistically, and the property was marketed adequately, then this is something that we can expect to achieve at auction.